I came home after a 12-hour shift, opened my front gate, and found a paper taped to my door that said weapon-free zone signed by the HOA president, and I actually laughed out loud. For about 3 seconds until I remembered who I am, and then the laugh died real quick. You want a hook? Fine, the person trying to bully me about guns called 911 on my barbecue, and she did not understand the one tiny problem: I'm the person who enforces the law. That right there is where everything went sideways. I'd been living in an apartment for years, but the job was getting heavier and the walls were getting thinner. I needed space, so I bought a foreclosure with a garage. It needed work. I like to tinker, and I wanted a yard where Rex and Bailey could run without giving the neighbors a free concert of barking at midnight. There was one catch: mandatory HOA. I figured I'd keep my head down, pay my dues, mow the lawn, and nobody would bother me. Famous last words, right? I'm single, early 40s, 2 German shepherds, 2 cats that act like tiny judgmental wolves, and a loud customized cruiser that I've put years into. To the HOA president, I ticked every box on the undesirable neighbor list: big dogs, loud bike, and yes, a profession that makes people read into everything. She lived directly across the street, clipboard in hand, like she'd been cast as the neighborhood's grand inspector. Our first interaction. No cookies. No welcome basket. She stood at the end of my driveway watching my moving truck like it had offended her personally. I wiped sweat off my neck, walked over, and introduced myself like an adult, offered a hand. She didn't shake it. She just stared at my dogs behind a new gate and told me aggressive breeds aren't welcome here. I told her they weren't aggressive, just big. She made a note, turned away, and that was that. After that, the fines started like clockwork. I'd come home exhausted, check the mailbox, and find a white envelope: violation for long grass measured still within the limit, violation for trash cans out too long. Problem was my schedule rotates and I don't always get home by 6. Violation for washing my bike in the driveway. Every reply I sent got the HOA auto-reply rules. Our rules exceptions create anarchy. The president turned hobby stalking me into a full-time job, watching from her window when I washed the bike, driving slowly past, when friends were over peering in like she was auditioning for a bad thriller. Here's the part I'll be blunt about: I keep my uniform at the station. When I'm home, I'm a guy in jeans and a tee. I like that separation. People treat you differently if they know what you do, and I wanted to be just the neighbor for once. Trouble is, you can't hide the things you love. I'm a collector: historic rifles, sport shooting. And one Saturday I was in the garage door, up, music low, cleaning a bolt-action oil on a rag, no magazine in sight, 0 ammo in the room. A shadow fell across my bench and I looked up to see the president at my threshold, eyes wide, scarf clutched like it was a life preserver. She demanded to know what I was doing. I said I was cleaning my equipment. She pointed at the rifle and said she didn't feel safe with guns in the neighborhood. I told her it was unloaded on my property, handled safely. She didn't care. She promised to bring it up at the next board meeting and left like a prophet delivering doom. 2 days later, a mass HOA email arrived, a new safety initiative, bolded and dramatic. We are now a weapon-free zone. Residents may not store assault weapons or military-grade firearms in homes or garages. I spit coffee across the sink. An HOA newsletter doesn't supersede state law. It doesn't rewrite the Constitution. I knew that because I enforced that law. But the paper went out, and for a few quiet weeks the neighborhood simmered. Then we cracked a big case at work, a catalytic converter ring, and the squad needed to decompress. We wanted a night that wasn't paperwork or court calendars, just beer, terrible barbecue, and stupid jokes. I offered my place. 15 guys said yes. Patrol detectives, K9 handlers, mostly friends. We were respectful. Music low, parked legally, nothing blocking driveways. Still picture it from across the street: 15 large bearded guys, leather bikes, pickup trucks. To some eyes, we looked like a takeover crew. About an hour and the blinds across the way fluttered, and there she was watching. I waved, nothing. Mike, one of my buddies, wanted to show off a new off-duty carry piece, small pistol, beautiful stippling on the grip. He cleared it, showed me the craftsmanship, and I was admiring it when she came barreling out to the end of my driveway, phone raised triumphant. She shouted that she'd caught us violating the weapon-free policy and had photographic proof. I walked down to talk. I still had the pistol in my hand, unloaded and safe, but it looked the way these things look in movies, tense. I tucked it into my waistband at the small of my back before I reached her, and asked what her problem was. She screamed that she was calling the police to shut the illegal gathering down, that I was harboring criminals, that Mike was a thug. She called 911, and because she wanted to make a point, put the call on speaker. I listened as she lied to the dispatcher. Men with guns waving them, threatening neighbors. I fear for my life. She used every hot-button phrase to guarantee a rapid, heavy response. The dispatcher asked if she was safe. She said she was retreating to the house but could see us loading weapons. My buddies looked at me. Half of them laughed, half were instantly serious. A call involving guns changes everything. We had to plan for officers arriving, hot hands visible, no sudden moves. Don't get yourself killed by the night shift because your neighbor needs drama. 10 minutes later, cavalry, 4 cars, floodlights, doors, flung, weapons drawn. A rookie crouched behind his door with his gun pointed right at my chest. "Everybody stay where you are," someone shouted. The president marched out, pointing, screaming, "That's them, that's the gang. They have guns." The rookie didn't know faces from the next block. That fear is real, and it shows in the way a hand trembles on a firearm. I kept my hands high and did something I'd trained for 1,000 times: de-escalate. I used my voice slow and flat. "Mueller, it's me. Stand down." He froze, squinted into the lights, and then, like air being let out of a balloon, the tension snapped. The Sergeant Connor, an old friend, stepped up, and after a second of stunned silence, he started chuckling. "So this is the gang activity." When the officers recognized faces, things shifted absurdly fast. The sergeant explained to the president calmly and with an edge, police enforce state and federal law, not HOA bylaws. If she had a civil dispute, take it to management. If she called 911 with false information, that was misuse. She tried doubling down, claimed Mike had pointed a gun at her. Now everything went quiet. Mike stepped forward, pinched his badge from his belt, and said, "Detective Kowalski, City PD, you just made a false report." The president's face drained. Color left her cheeks like someone flicked a switch. Connor gave her a citation for misuse of 911 misdemeanor fine, mandatory court date, and told her if she made another false report, there'd be further charges. The neighbors who had been peeking from porches were whispering and pointing. The aura of authority she'd cultivated was evaporating. She signed the paperwork with shaking hands and shuffled back to her house, broken in a way that looked a lot like humility. The management company did what firms do when legal heat gets turned on. They reviewed the rogue weapon-free zone policy and realized it contradicted state law and the community's governing documents, so they rescinded it and voided every fine they'd slapped on me, grass, trash bins, the whole parade of petty citations. They sent an apology letter. I think they figured having a cop in the neighborhood who knows his rights is a liability they don't need. At the next HOA meeting, a sweet older lady 2 doors down stood up during open forum and moved to remove the president for mismanagement and for creating legal exposure for the association. The vote was almost unanimous. The president left in a huff, muttered about ungrateful neighbors, and that was that. New president now works in IT, likes my dogs, and asked me for advice on security cameras. I couldn't script a better, quieter outcome. There's a lesson folded into all of that. Not a sermon, just something I felt: small power used vindictively becomes a community hazard. When someone treats civic tools like weapons, the real damage is to trust. The fix wasn't revenge, it was accountability, and it arrived through process and by getting the right people to look at the facts. Life after that has been quieter but not boring. The neighbor stories keep coming, like the old couple on the left who obsess over parking. They complained when a friend left a truck in front of their house for a day while owning space for a truck their own selves. We tried to be polite until one holiday started with a knock at 8 in the morning. I was asleep. Later, the husband told my partner, "We called the cops because you parked too close." My partner shrugged. I, however, am not built for endless niceness. So I play a small, stupid game. I park a little closer, 1 foot between our cars, a passive little nudge. They have cameras on every inch. They saw me give a peace sign, which they called a flip-off. A cop watched the footage and actually laughed at the neighbor's description. Little by little, I nudged their blood pressure up, harmless, petty, and frankly satisfying. If they keep weaponizing the system, I'll file harassment. The cops know these folks. They call on nonsense. Sometimes pushing back quietly is the only medicine. And then there was the gas can thief, the guy who kept walking into my backyard, taking my 5-gallon can for his mower and returning it empty. Before the cheap camera days, I rigged an old laptop webcam with motion detection and caught him in the act. For a week, every time I needed to pee, I did it in that can full of pee, but still smelling faintly like gas, and left it out on purpose, making the show of getting ready for a trip. He took the bait, returned, swearing his mower wouldn't start, and a block down his car died. Karma's weird like that. Later, I learned the guy had warrants, and I helped get him reported. Small town cleanup. So tonight I'm heading out to the garage. Rex and Bailey bouncing. The guys are popping over for another shop night. We'll be loud, we'll laugh, we'll rant about paperwork and eat something that's technically questionable, and we'll be completely legal about it. That's the joy. You can live loud, but you don't have to be illegal to enjoy it. What do you think when someone uses a civic tool like 911 or an HOA rule to punish a neighbor? Should there be stiffer consequences? Or is this just the cost of living in a community where people care too much about control? Tell me your worst neighbor horror or your greatest petty victory. I want to read the stories. Sometimes justice shows up as a citation, sometimes it's a new president of the HOA, and sometimes it's just watching the neighborhood breathe easier because one person finally learned that rules aren't weapons.